Yeah, so as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about stormwater runoff, boil water advisories, and everything that can kind of happen in the wake of a major storm surge like we saw with Hurricane Ida last week. So when we're talking about stormwater runoff, it's really all of the water after a major storm event or snow melt, whatever it is, flowing water that travels across the surface of the earth, whether it's paved sidewalks or roads, buildings even, or even just like your front yard. It's anything of that nature. And when water travels, it can pick up loose debris, pesticides, gasoline, fertilizers. It can pick up anything that might be on the ground and actually deposit it into a larger body of water. And so, with stormwater runoff, there are so many different contaminants that can be of concern, and it really depends where you live. If you're living in a city, that water might be more gasoline type related pollutants, whereas if you're living in Idaho, for example, perhaps it's fertilizers and pesticides and things that are used with agriculture. And so the impacts to our water resources really depend on, again, where you live and how water travels across the land. So this could, if you're in a really developed area, water moves quicker over impervious surfaces. And so these different factors really contribute to the risk that stormwater runoff has on your drinking water. So there are kind of two examples that I wanted to use for different reasons why you should care about stormwater runoff. So let's say that you're living in a really storm-prone area, and your municipal water provider gets its water from a nearby river or local groundwater aquifer. You are much more concerned with the quality of that resource, right? Because your activities can directly impact what's then going into your body. So for example, my parents' home, they live in a community where the groundwater wells are within the city limits. So, and it's a relatively small municipality. So the activities that go on in my parents' hometown can impact the drinking water, pretty much immediately. On the contrary to that, there are several municipalities where they're kind of displaced from the source water. So Boston is a really good example with the Quabbin Reservoir. The reservoir is hundreds of miles away. And so Bostonians might not be concerned with the health of the source water that's hundreds of miles away. In addition to that, it's nowhere near the city, the activities that are going on in Boston, the road salts and stuff, that won't really necessarily impact the source water because it's hundreds of miles away. And so it doesn't matter if you are living in either of these two different types of communities. Both become extremely susceptible to pollution when the water infrastructure is damaged in a municipality. So when a storm surge comes through, utilities are typically the first to, quote, go offline, which means they either experience an outage or they're unable to do the duty that they've been assigned. So whether it's, an electricity line that goes down or a water main is damaged or there's like an influx of water that the treatment plant isn't able to treat. Utilities are the most susceptible to these storm surges. So it doesn't matter if you live in a small municipality or a large city, you can become susceptible to these damages just based on the structure of your utilities and the pipes that deliver water throughout. And so one of the things that we wanted to talk about is boil water advisories, which if you haven't experienced in your municipality, you're pretty lucky because they can be quite a pain. So boil water advisories are issued when a water main breaks, when a water treatment plant isn't able to properly treat the drinking water, and a city will issue an advisory. They've become more advanced and you might get a notification on your phone. Typically it'll be on the city's website or some sort of announcement, just to try and make as many people aware of a boil water advisory. And so you must boil your water before drinking, cooking, brushing your teeth, anything of that nature, before using it. And so the CDC recommends that you boil your water for 1 to 3 minutes to kill off things like E. coli and other bacteria that could have gotten into the water from either a broken water line or even backflow from a sewage treatment plant that could have perhaps entered a drinking water source. So I've kind of given a 30,000 foot view of like how these major storm events could impact water resources in practice. But I thought it was important to kind of give examples of how Ida actually impacted drinking water and other water resources. And so with Hurricane Ida, so many communities on the East Coast experienced boil water advisories. And in Louisiana alone, 17 parishes were under boil water advisories in the matter of a week. And Jersey City and Hoboken, New Jersey were both under boil water advisories that lasted over a week as well. And so these are millions of people that we're talking about that were required to boil their water before, giving formula to their infant. Like this is a very real thing. Millions of people were just forced to do this just last week. So I think another really good example is the Chesapeake Bay, which, so the Chesapeake Bay is the largest estuary in the United States. And I'm going to try to get all of these states, maybe I'll have to look, but Delaware, Maryland, New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia, and DC are all part of the Chesapeake Bay watershed. So it's this massive conglomerate of tributaries and rivers and streams, and basically all of that storm water ends up in the watershed. So whether it's making its way to the Chesapeake Bay, it's all in the overall Chesapeake Bay watershed. And so, like I mentioned earlier, stormwater runoff contains various types of pollutants. The largest problem in the Chesapeake Bay is, of course, fertilizers and phosphorus, which can create hypoxia and really severe conditions for fish and deoxygenating the water. So this is a different issue than drinking water, but I still felt like it was important to highlight. So with the Chesapeake Bay, after Hurricane Ida, 200 cubic feet of polluted water was entering the bay every second. And for a bit more context, this is 2.2 Olympic-sized swimming pools every single second that was entering the Chesapeake Bay. And so because the bay already has all of these problems with pollution, this exacerbated it even more. And now communities are going to have to do testing to make sure that the water is safe for swimming, fishing, recreation, and whatever else. And I also wanted to highlight another kind of industry that was impacted by Ida, and it's an industry that involves, again, a really important water resource, the Narragansett Bay in Rhode Island. And so the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management actually halted shellfish harvesting until the end of this week, so September 12th. Because of the excessive rain and because of the potential for contamination in this particular bay. And so that is 2 full weeks of this really important fishing season in New England. And that's real money for Rhode Island. So now we're talking about the local economy. And so, yeah, these were just kind of some examples that I wanted to highlight today. And if you're living on the East Coast, maybe do a quick Google search of, how Ida may have impacted water resources in your area. And if you need help identifying this, then you can feel free to DM us or email us at hello@hydroviv.com. But I think the moral of the story is that stormwater runoff can impact drinking water, water resources, and even the economy. So it's really important that we learn about how to reduce stormwater runoff and really what we can do about these major storm surges that are only increasing with climate change. So, as always, you can ask us questions at our Instagram. You can go to our website, hydroviv.com, and use our live chat feature. You can also email us at hello@hydroviv.com. We love answering these types of questions, and so feel free to ask away. We're happy to be a resource for you. So I hope that everyone found this helpful, and yeah, I hope everyone has a great rest of the week, and we will see you next Wednesday. So thank you so much. Have a good one.